Alright, hello YouTube. We're going to go ahead and work on a Ace Attorney tutorial today. Character creation. It's not the most difficult thing on the planet. I decided to remake the video and remake the document and everything. So hopefully this one should go a lot quicker, should be a lot easier, should be a lot simpler, more straightforward, and less confusing. Making a character isn't all that hard. The most difficult part is just the amount of time it's going to take. So let's go ahead and walk through making a character step by step. So the first things that you're going to need are the required resources that you have to work with. So you're going to need your character sprites, artworks, PNGs. You're going to need an editing service, GIMP, Photoshop. Pixlr is the one that I'm going to be using in this video, my personal recommendation. You're going to need time, you're going to need patience, and I have included a blank character folder in here to help get you started. I recommend that, but you don't, of course, need to use it. So those are your required tools. Step 0.5. You want to make sure you have everything gathered, ready to go. You can just kind of follow the guide here, follow along as we go. We're going to go ahead and just get into step number 1. Converting your raw images into an AO format. This is essentially where the very beginning of your character is going to start. So you have all of your character files. I have all of my raw images here. Let's come in here. This is a character that we're going to be making. CUD. You can see I have all these character sprites to work with to make a character. So how do I manage to put these into AO format? Well, AO format is 256 by 192. Optionally, you can use any aspect ratio that's 4:3, 800 by 600, 512, classic 256, 192. As long as they're in one of those sizes, it should just work automatically. Not the most difficult thing on the planet, but sometimes it can take a little bit of fiddling. So let's go ahead and let's just open up a character. Let's ignore these. I was recording earlier, but a couple of things went unfortunately awry, as always happens when you try to record a video. So let's go ahead. Let's open an image here. Let us open one that we already have. Just going to come out here to the desktop, find my raw images. You're going to have them, of course, in your own location. Let's grab this first image here. Boom, there we go. Now, I'm lucky in this circumstance because my character already happens to be 800 by 600. So for me, I can just rock and roll with this. That's not obviously always going to happen, but for the tutorial, this should work perfectly fine. Now, before I go ahead and move on with that, I will real quick just give a short blurb on how to make a character that is 256 by 192. It's going to happen sometimes. So we'll go ahead, open up our character. Now we're going to go back out to our blank folder. Alright, we're here. We have the blank folder. We're going to start making a character. We have our raw character sprites somewhere else. I'm just going to go ahead, open up this blank. That's 256 by 192. It's exactly what we want. We're going to open as a layer the raw images that we have. Come in here, find little CUD, grab the same image, and would you look at that? She is way bigger than the AO format. She will never fit in there. If you put this in there, and it's basically going to be a giant face on the screen. So we'll go ahead, we'll edit this down, retransform that. Remember to hold shift to retain the proportions. Find something that looks pretty good. I think size-wise, that's okay. Align her up. Alright. Nice and simple. Now, inside the base blank folder that I gave you, I've included a couple of helpful tools to help you figure out what your character will look like. We have a character stand. Okay, that's what that looks like. This is very useful for centering images. So, maybe if I need to move her a little bit to the left, I can see what that looks like. I can move this down. Okay, that looks good. Move that up. If you're using a prosecution or a defense or a judge character, You can obviously import those benches as well. I didn't include them in the blank folder, but you can find them pretty easily if you just go into any of the character folders that you have. All the vanilla characters essentially have the same ones, so you can just go in there and pull them out. They're also in the backgrounds folder as well, I believe. They're in a couple of different places, so you can find them pretty easily. So, align it up to your heart's content. That looks pretty good to me. I think that she's nice in center. If I do that, she looks good. Now, this is where step 1.5 comes in. You're probably wondering, okay, I have my raw character sprite sized exactly as I need it. This is the sprite that I want. This is the emote that I want to use on my character. 800 by 600, 156 by 192, same thing essentially. What's 1.5? What's step 1.5? Step 1.5 is actually adding 2 layers to this. You want to make sure that the image that you're going to be working with is your top layer. And you're probably wondering, oh, okay, well, what do we want these layers for? We are going to add some backgrounds. We're going to add a black background. We are going to add a white background. Now, we're not going to save the character with these backgrounds, but they serve a purpose. What purpose is that? If we come down in here and we take a look at 1.5, what is that? Phantom pixels, white character outlines of death. What does that mean? Well, if your character happens to have been ripped poorly or is a little crusty, is a term that I like to use, is a little crusty or a little pixelated, sometimes you can end up with pixels that are floating off to the side. So what this does, by toggling the background, you can see any pixels that pop out. Say, for example, when somebody was ripping this, there was a white pixel that just so happened to be, hiding out here in the middle of the abyss. Now, if I were making an AO character and I didn't decide to take a look, if I just looked at this and you were to look me in the eyes and say, there's a white pixel in there somewhere, I'd be like, I don't see it. I don't think that you can see that either. That's invisible. That's straight up gone. But if you're using that character, you're gonna notice it. Because the second that there's any background, that pixel is gonna pop out and it's gonna bug the heck out of you if you don't take a couple seconds and make sure that the resources that you're working with, your raw character images, are cleaned of all of this stuff. If you have to do some editing, if you have to do some erasing, then that's just what you're going to have to do. So we're just going to get rid of that, since this is added onto the black background, so it's technically not there. But if this was on the original image, you would see that. So we edit that out, erase any pixels or crust that are on the image. That's all gone, fine and dandy. Character sprite is looking fabulous. It's looking great. All right, so we have our raw character image here, and this is a personal step. I would say layer any other raw sprites that you're going to be working with that are of the same pose. What does that mean? All right, we'll go into that real quick. So we come back in here. We have the next emote here. We'll just take this, and you can see now there's a difference. The reason why we want to do this is because we want to make sure that the characters are lined up. If I come in here and let's say this character just happens to be like 5 pixels off to the side, you're not paying attention. Something is 1 pixel off to the side, 2 pixels. You're not paying attention. You're moving a bit too quickly. You accidentally move something. The character sprites just happen to come that way. Whatever be the case, sometimes you might not notice it. You'll work your entire character out. Character will be finished. You'll go to test them, and when you're doing that, when you switch emotes, they'll bobble back and forth. It's a real nightmare to have to go back in and edit all your images just to make sure that they line back up. Now, what do I mean by making sure that they're all the same pose? Well, this one is a pretty similar pose to the first one. Let's go ahead and line that up again. All right, that looks lined up. Okay, same pose. The reason why we want to keep it that way is for the buttons that we're going to do later. So we're future-proofing this already. So let's open up another layer for one that's a completely different pose. You'll see what I mean. All right, boom. This is a different pose. Oh, I mean, it looks pretty much the same, but you can see she's got her arm up. If I'm cropping an image here, let's just say all you can see is little Cud's face in the buttons, and you're trying to select, what emote you want to use. If this is all somebody has to go off of what that emote is, they might not realize that this is her with her arm up. This is essentially looks very similar to this one, and this one looks very similar to this one, even though her mouth doesn't change. If you scroll down, her hands are changing. So this is what I mean by the same pose, similar poses, and the like. You want it to look in such a way that they're all lined up, and when you're going through cropping out your buttons, they all match. So I would take every single photo that probably has the fist up, and I would take every single layer of all the raw images that are this emote that has her fist up, and I would make them like a completely separate emote. I would open this as a new image. I would come in here, I would say let's open this one up, and let's layer all the ones that has her fist up, like so. And that way, when I'm making my character image, when I'm making the buttons, I can tell the difference between this one and this one, and for consistency's sake, all of the buttons will be cropped the same. So all of the ones with their hand held up will all be the ones with their hand held up. That way, I'm never confused about what emote I'm looking at, and that it looks nice and professional. It's just a little quick step that adds a lot of professionalism to your image. Let's come in here and take a look at an example. So we have this character in here, Sasami, and if we take a look at all the emotes down here, and we take a look at all of her buttons, we can see that they're all cropped perfectly fine, and that's because of layering. You take the time to layer them out. When you crop them out, all the poses that need to look the same will look the same. If we come out here, we'll just do a little quick scroll down past step 3 and step 4. As you can see down here, you have different things are the standout pose. So if we look at Ibuki here on the left, you can see that these faces down here are all cropped exactly the same in the same spot. That's because they layered them. Now obviously if you have something that looks a little different, like this one up here, it's going to be cropped a little differently. Sometimes you have to crop in a different spot just to show what the main action is. You look over here at Trucy, you can see the same thing. So by taking the time to actually do this step in step 1, you save yourself a lot of headache in step 3. So we've layered them up. We've decided, okay, these are the emotes that we want to make. Let's go ahead and start saving the emotes. So we have emote number 1. Let's go ahead and save this. We're going to come out to our blank folder, emotes. We're just going to save this as the number 1. Now obviously you can change the naming format later. We'll get to that when we get to the any step. But for now, for simplicity's sake, we just want to add some emotes to this. So let's get this going. Number 2. Oh, that's unfortunate. Let's not have it this way. As you can see, I have moved her in some capacity. They don't line up anymore. So let's not do that emote. We'll just do this one up here. So it'll help me later. I'll show you. Alright, there we go. We'll just do that. That'll just be emote number 2. And you will just repeat this step ad nauseum until you're done with all of them, until they're all layered properly. You're testing the backgrounds every once in a while, making sure that you don't have any pixels sneaking in there. Okay. You can do this for 40 images. You can do this for 3 images. We are just going to do 2 for simplicity's sake. So let's come back out here. Let's go back, find our blank image here. Alright. So we have all of these saved in the emotes folder. 1, 2, like I said, image size 800 by 600, but you can also work with 256 like I showed previously. They'll essentially look exactly the same at this point. But later on you will see a quality difference. They're significantly better, believe me. There's a lot less crust. So edit as you will to get to this point. you finish all of your raw character sprites. Should be done at this point, and we're going to finish step 1 and 1.5. So then we get to step 2. What is step 2? Editing the ini. Alright, there's an in-depth ini guide here in the tutorial in case you want more advanced steps, but we will just go through this real quick. It's pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of this extra stuff that I don't need anymore. This is a good time to do that. We don't need the GIF, we don't need the chat box, icon, we don't need these examples in any sort of capacity. This should be all that your folder looks like currently. What you're going to want to first do is change this to just char.ini. It should be all that this is. It's going to be the same for every single character. Just char, that's your ini. We'll go ahead and open that. And this is what this looks like. Alright, what does any of this mean? There's a whole bunch of code. Am I going to have to learn how to code in order to make a character? You're not going to really need to. It's pretty straightforward once you know what you're doing. Alright, so this first option up here says name. This is the name of the folder of the character. This tells the ini where the character is, and which character that it is that the ini is supposed to be looking for. So let's go ahead and close this real quick. We have our blank folder. Close out of that real quick. The reason why we want to do that is because we want to rename the blank folder as the character's name that we're going to set it as. So we are going to go ahead and just save this as little Cud's name. I cannot pronounce that. I won't even try. That will get butchered. Cud's name is now saved in there. Looks good. Let me just real quick sneak in here, make sure I didn't spell that wrong. Alright, cool. Fantastic. Alright, Cud's name is there. Perfectly fine. So when we come in here and name and we have the blank folder renamed as the same name, go ahead, type that in here again. Alright. So that's what this first line means. Name of the folder that the character is. Show name. This is the name that shows up when your character is speaking. If we come back in here to our example, we have Sasami. If we come into Sasami's folder real quick and take a look at what her ini looks like, you can see there's a difference. Sasami, and then her show name is Sasami. So it's pretty straightforward. So if we come in here, we are just going to go with Cud. And so little Cud should be fine. Side, this is obviously where you want your character to be, their starting position. Judge, prosecution, defense, depending on what character you're making. And you go from there. Number in the emotion section. So this emotion section is where the ini is actually telling Attorney Online what images are what, essentially, what emotes are what. You want the number to be the same number of raw images that you're going to have total. So in our case, we only have 2 emotes. Now obviously, you just can repeat this as far as you want to go. AO2 supports infinite number of character emotes. Obviously, it's going to take you more time, but that's essentially all you need. You can ignore this little first mode thing. That's actually like a bygone sort of thing that's been sitting in there for a long time. You can just let that go and ignore that. And so then we're going to move on to the next part. So we have all these numbered sections here of a whole bunch of emotes. Alright, well, what does any of this mean? Well, the first thing we want to do is just get rid of any extra or add any extra that we need. We only have 2 emotes, so we're going to do that for all 3 sections here. We're going to do that for the sound sections and for that emotion section. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, 2 emotes, 2 sound T. Alright, so what does this mean? We have number 1. I'll go ahead and open this here to show you what that means. That's going to be this little drop-down menu here. It's essentially just the name, a comment of whatever it is. I tend to just make it the same thing as the emote's name. Tends to make it pretty simple. Then you have these 2 little numbers here. Now in between these numbers is pre-animation. Typically you won't be using that unless you're making a GIF. If you had a pre-animation, you could always put it in there. You just have to label what that is. If you want more information on that, go ahead and take a look at the GIF tutorial. That should explain that. but we're going to move on from that. Typically, I just leave that blank for PNG characters because you never need to worry about it. Then you're looking at this next section. So we have emotes /1. Now, if we come over here back to our tutorial guide, we can see that there's a little helpful thing here in this tip that explains to us exactly what this means. So this means folder name, image name. The slash is what tells the ini the difference between the two. So we have emotes. If we come into our character, we can see we have the emotes folder, and that matches up. Emotes, and then /1. If you go into the emotes folder, number 1 is number 1. If I named this, say for example, angry, even though she's not angry, I would have to come into here and change this to angry and make sure that they match up. You don't really essentially need to worry about the last two numbers that are in here, number 0, number 1. Those are just like extra animation things. Typically, usually only use those for zoom in files or GIFs. And if you want those are more advanced character creation sort of things. Not super difficult to do. You kind of get a basic outline of what that looks like anyways in the blank folder. So we have this set up. First mode, we have our 2 images done. We have them formatted into AO format, either 192 or 4:3, whichever works best for you in quality terms. All right, and that's it. That's all you have to do for the emote. Save that, or for the ini. Save that. That is complete. Character ini is done. Your raw images are formatted. The last big step that you're going to have to do is step 3, which is making the buttons. This is going to be your longest step and the longest process. If you thought making your character sprites into the correct AO size was long enough, this is going to be the one that really proves otherwise. So we're going to come back in here, and I'm going to show you exactly what I meant by all the pre-stepping in step 1 to make sure that this goes just fine. So if we come in here, we're going to need to grab our crop tool and set the output size to 40:40, because this is what the button size is in AO. So 40:40 PNGs. Now we're going to basically go ahead and crop our character in some manner that allows us to know what this emotion is. So for this one, I could probably just select her fist. Could be one way to do it. I could select her face and her arm. There's a way to do it. I think that looks pretty good for this one. But as you can see, if I switch down to this one or this one, you can't really tell a difference between the two. They look exactly the same, and that's what the layering is about. Layering is because you want to make sure that all your emotes are cropped the same way so that they don't look disgusting. If we come down here and take a look at our Sasami example, you can see that they're all cropped the exact same way because I layered them. And it adds a lot of professionalism that you don't really notice until after it's done. But I definitely recommend that. So for this one, we're just going to grab the first image that we have in here, little cud smiling. So let's go ahead, crop her face. We get her nice smile in there. We're going to save this. And we are going to save this under a different name and a different location. So we're going to come back in here. We are going to grab our base folder, our blank folder, which we've already renamed to the character folder. And now where do we put the buttons? These go into emotions. Different from emotes, it will always be emotions. Put it into this folder. We have these two little spots in here, button 1_off, button 1_on. We are going to save this one as off, and we want to save it under the exact same name and replace it. Okay, that's done. We come in here, let's double check. Okay, we can see her nice smiling face in there. If you want to know what the difference is in terms of looking at some of these, you can scroll down and see the examples down here as shown previously of what on and off look like in different color schemes. So we've done this. I would just do this for every single layered image. So if I had another image that was formatted exactly the same, I would just roll on, make that say for example, button number 2 off, button number 3 off, 4 off, changing that as many times as I need to so that they all match up. Like for example, switching this one and this one, you can see she's smiling different. Obviously it's a little crooked because we moved it earlier. And just go down the list until you're done with all of those. And you know, we have this one is a different image, so we're going to crop this one differently. Come in here, crop this. We're going to crop this so that we can see that, like, oh hey, this is the image that has her fist being held up. So let's go ahead and save this. This is going to be our button number 2. So on and so forth until you have gone through all of these. And then what I have found is the easiest way to do this is after you've finished cropping and saving the buttons for all of the off position, is to go in, open them up as a new image, and then layer them again. And you will want to layer all of them, including the ones that look different because they're just the same size. And the reason for doing this is because, again, the time wasting step, you're going to need to start adjusting the colors or adding, you know, some sort of manner of allowing you to know that this button has been selected. In my case, I like to just make the saturation -100, and I just do that for every single layer. Nice, simple, and easy. So they're now black and white. I can tell that there's a difference between them and the original. I have seen some people do different sorts of things, like putting an X over the selected button. I've seen people do all kinds of different things, like putting a filter over it. Like you can see with Trucy's example, there's a filter over it, so she's still in color. I just simply prefer the black and white because it's easiest. And then you're basically going to do the same thing, though. You're going to come back in, save, only this time we are going to save these as button 1 on. Or vice versa, you can save the colored images as on and black and white as off. It just changes the color format. And artistic liberties can be taken during this step. So we're going to go ahead and replace this one. That's done. Unselect that layer, select the next one, save this as the next button, button number 2 on, and you would just run down the list. And so when you come to the conclusion, your emotes folder should have 2 of every single button, one black, one white, or one with an X over it, one not, one pixelated, one not pixelated. I have seen all kinds of different methods of having this done. Whatever works best for you, whatever you like best artistically, go ahead and do here. So you should have 2 of every single button, and you want to double check during this step to make sure that the buttons match the emote that you're using, so that you're not selecting a button that just is completely different than the emote or the pose that they use. And so at this point, step 3 is essentially done. We've fixed the ini, we've changed the folder name, we have all of our raw images made into an AO format, and we have all of our emotions done. The character is, for all intents and purposes, finished. Now obviously this one's a really small character because we've only made 2 emotes, but you can have characters upwards of like 120. When this character is fully complete, I will show you what that looks like. It's going to have a little bit of a different naming format, but it should essentially look like this. I'll leave the example in the description so you can take a look at this character and take a look at what that looks like. As a real short off example, I can show you right now. This is probably what it's going to look like. Is the Sasami example that we used previously. I have these separated by costume so that when I come in and out they look differently, and that's really easy to do. If we open her character ini, you can see that you can change the folders. So I have C1 as a folder and I have C2 as a different folder, so the emotes are separated that way. So that's probably what this character is going to look like in the end, but again, I will include that as an example in the description. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to test this character. So we have our CUD here. She's nice and ready to go. We are going to copy this folder. We are going to open up our Ace Attorney folder. We're going to come into our base folder, our characters folder, and we are going to paste this. I already have a copy in there. I'm just going to save over that. Obviously, you want to update it as you go along. Then what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to ini swap. That's real easy. Just going to copy the character ini. We're just going to go find Persona folders. I'm just going to use Persona 14. Delete the one already in there, post in there. Again, you can ini swap over any character. All right, that's good to go for testing. Let's go ahead and open up our AO, go into our little test server here, connect to that. I'm going to just go over here, Persona 14. You can see the character. Let's just go to another area so that we don't bug anybody here. And let's just test it out. Look at that. Fantastic. We can see little Cud nice and happy, having a good old time in here. You can see that when you change the buttons down here on the bottom, when you change the emotes, you can see that there's a difference between them. That looks like it's working just as intended. And the show name is right. This character is done. It's completed. The only thing left at this point would be to upload it and then share that with people so that they can actually see your character as well. And that's it. If you have sound files, I would essentially say follow the guide up here for applying server file packs. Is essentially the formatting is all that's there. Really all you need to pay attention to is where the music and sound effects go. You can also take a look at folder navigation tutorial as well. That should help you out there. The only other step besides this is the optional character selection, and that's just in here in your AO folder, miscellaneous demo things. This is just essentially what you see when you're selecting your character, like so. These will be a slightly different format. They'll be 60 by 60. I hope this has helped you out. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. You can optionally also reach out to me on Discord. That should also be in the description. The Ace Attorney or the Attorney Online Discord as well has a lot of fantastic people in there. I highly recommend going there if you also have any more questions. They're great people, and they always love to help out. That's all there is to it. Good luck and goodbye.